China made the world's medical supplies. Then the coronavirus hit. Have we learned our lesson about made in China products? Welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. China controls the global medical supply chain. That's not too good in the event of a pandemic. Kind of a problem. China covered up the coronavirus to hoard medical supplies. The Chinese government told Western companies like 3M that were making N95 masks in China that they were no longer allowed to export them. The Chinese Communist Party even threatened to withhold life-saving medicine if the U.S. kept asking questions about the origins of the coronavirus. If only these critical medical supplies weren't all made in China. If only someone tried to warn us. Well, someone did. Mike Bowen, co-founder of the medical supply company Prestige Ameritech. For 15 years, he tried to tell anyone who would listen the enormous national security disaster the United States was facing. But 4 different U.S. administrations wouldn't listen. And if you think we've learned our lesson after the coronavirus pandemic, you'd be wrong. The U.S. is making the same mistakes all over again. And it's not just a problem with made in China masks. It's a problem with made in China everything. Joining me now is Mike Bowen. Thanks for joining us, Mike.
Thank you. My pleasure.
So I can tell right off the bat this is going to be one of those interviews that makes me angry. The coronavirus pandemic definitely exposed a lot of the fault lines in American society. But I think one thing that's getting lost now is just how unprepared the U.S. was for a sudden demand in PPEs, things like the N95 mask. What happened in the early days of the pandemic?
Well, in January, I started seeing a lot of chatter. I'm getting emails from around the world. I'm getting emails from DHS. Somebody at the border emailed me and said, "Do you make respirators in the U.S.?" And I said, "Yeah." Can you make a lot of them? I said, "Yeah." And I said, "Why?" "Well, we think this could be a problem." And I said, "Okay, tell me, is one American to another like a real problem?" And he said, yeah, I do. So I was getting a lot of stuff like that. So I contacted Rick Bright, who I'd been in contact with for a couple of years with HHS, and said, "Hey, this is going to be bad. I think we're going to be in trouble." And then right after that, all hell broke loose.
For 15 years, you've been trying to warn the country that we have a serious mask shortage. China controls everything. Why did no one listen?
I can't really figure that out. I talked to everybody. I talked to people in government, politicians. I talked to hospital administrators, hospital group purchasing organizations, and they either didn't believe it or didn't want to believe it. And it was on the news every time there was a flu or whatever. I would be interviewed, and I would say, "Okay, yeah, I'm selling a lot of masks. That's the story you want, but here's the real story: is that China and other countries control the U.S. mask supply. If there's a pandemic, those supplies will be diverted to their citizens, and our healthcare workers and patients will be unprotected. This is a national security problem that we need to fix. Doesn't cost much to fix. The whole market is only $150 million. Let's fix it." And I couldn't get anyone to take action.
This is something you've been screaming into the void for 4 U.S. government administrations: Bush, Obama, Trump, now Biden. How did China end up dominating the global medical supply chain? Didn't anyone think that was a bad idea?
Low prices. And you have to understand that America's hospitals belong to group purchasing organizations. They call them GPOs. And America's hospitals don't make buying decisions on their own. They don't negotiate on their own. They join 1,000 other hospitals with a GPO, and the GPO will send out a bid, for instance, masks or respirators. And so it's an all or nothing proposition. The way you win the bids is to have the lowest price. The way you have the lowest price is to make products in China.
And that's because China, being a state-controlled economy, they're purposefully putting out things below market costs, correct?
That's the way it seems. I know for a fact that Chinese masks that are being sold here to distributors for a penny cannot be made for, a penny. The cost is way higher than that. So they're being subsidized. So it must be by the Chinese government. And for what reason? Maybe to control the PPE supply of the world. It's not just the USA. I don't have international business. The reason I don't have international business is because China owns the market. And I've had hundreds of distributors from around the world call me in the past and say, we'd like to sell your masks, until I give them my price. And they say, well, we have to stay with the Chinese masks.
Certainly if they're charging a penny, the Chinese government is not interested in making money. But for comparison, how much do your masks cost? If China is selling them for a penny, what does Prestige Americatech sell them for?
About a dime. So you can buy
dime.
2 masks. Yeah, a dime. It's class 2 medical device. You can buy 2 of them for less than the price of a gumball. The penny price is like, well, let's just put it in other terms. Let's say that Russia introduced a car here, and that car cost $100. Okay, we all know that they can't do that. Even non-business people know that that's not right. Well, that's what's happening here. You can't sell a mask for a penny.
But so the difference between 5 cents and a penny, like, we are sacrificing our national security and the lives of Americans for pennies.
For a very small amount of money, the entire U.S. mask supply before COVID, I don't know what it's going to be after COVID, it may be bigger, was 150 million with an M dollars, the whole market. There are 6,000 hospitals. Divide a million by 6,000. That's how much it would cost each hospital to buy masks. Okay, now let's say that my masks cost 30% less, or sorry, 30% more than the masks. It's not a big problem. It's the teeny, hospitals are spending more on
surgeries.
Diapers. Yeah, they're spending more on all kinds of things than they are on masks. Masks are a very small spend. And yet, because they want to save pennies, the hospitals and the American-made mask makers who went to China to serve the hospitals have put the U.S. in a severe national security problem.
I mean, I just remember at the start of the pandemic, the panic over masks, what a political issue it was. The government telling average Americans, don't wear masks. We need to save them for the frontline medical workers. And like all of this for like the difference for pennies.
Yeah. It was a very strange thing to watch, especially as someone who sells a product that nobody really thinks about during peacetime. I mean, my phones don't ring during peacetime. And a year ago, I was getting a phone call a minute and an email every 30 seconds.
Well, has the coronavirus pandemic changed anything? Surely people are paying attention to the issue now.
I would like to say that's true. I thought that was true after H1N1 10 years ago. And when again, I'd been telling the message for 3 or 4 years when H1N1 hit. And I thought, okay, people get it now. We're going to fix this problem. No, as soon as it ended, it went back to the same way. Although people who came to me crying, literally some of them crying on the phone, wanting masks, we provided masks. They went back to their foreign-made masks afterward. So we're not learning. And I fear that we're not learning this time too, because I actually have hospital systems and GPOs right now telling me that they're going to continue to rely mainly on foreign-made masks because they cost less, and they will supplement that by buying maybe 25% of American-made masks. But what they don't get is that doesn't work. This pandemic was mild. In a severe pandemic, China would cut off 80% of the mask supply. So the people who are making 20, they can't, the Americans that they're using for to have some sense of security won't be able to make up the difference.
And when you say this pandemic was mild, you're saying like comparing it to a pandemic that kills 2 in every 10 people versus 2 in 100.
Right. Well, here's the proof of what I'm saying. We've got people out there that don't even believe that it's real. Why not? Because there are a lot of people who don't know somebody who has died. Well, in 1918, with the pandemic, everybody knew people who died. It was bad. And it's, let me put it this way. Let's say that we had an Ebola outbreak and there's dead people laying in the street and people get it and they bleed out of their eyes and dying all over the place. Would masks have become politicized? Would vaccines have become politicized? Would states be having secret vaccinations for people who are embarrassed to get vaccinated because their friends are going to make fun of them? No. People who have been standing in line to get vaccinated and standing in line to get masks instead of calling it a hoax. And I fear that having a bunch of these, what I call the boy who cried wolf, in a sense, hey, it's going to be bad, and it's not bad. Hey, it's going to be bad, it's not bad. We've been through that 4 or 5 times. SARS, Ebola, H1N1, and now COVID. When the big one does come, I think we're going to be in big trouble because I don't think people are going to believe it until it's too late.
Well, so since the coronavirus pandemic began, American manufacturing has stepped up. There are companies making masks. Is this a sign that the issue has changed or that it's been solved, that America can kind of take away some of that control that China has over the global medical supply chain?
I don't think so, because the people who went into business, the 50 or 100 people who went into business of masks this year are all going to go out of business. In the next 3 or 4 months, they will all be out of business. Most of them will probably be bankrupt because the peacetime market can't support they can't support them. There's not enough business, especially if the government doesn't level the playing field and the Chinese are still allowed to play. The market's going to be tiny still. Instead of 8 companies trying to survive, or 5 or 6, there's going to be 110. That doesn't work. So no, this is going to end. All those companies are going to go out of business. We're not going to have a giant amount of capacity, and we are at risk of having this happen all over again.
So the Chinese Communist Party controlling America's medical supply chain, that's a national security issue, transparently. What needs to be done?
Well, you're asking a businessman a political question. I don't know. I don't know. It's just, I see that the problem, it's a problem. Our country, and it's not just masks, of course, it's drugs. It's critical items that we have to have, and they control them. And the reason they control them is they bought the rights to do that. They gave us prices we couldn't resist. Those everyday low prices are going to kill us.
America can't even make aspirin anymore.
Yeah. The list goes on. The list goes on. And sometimes too, it's not just the medicine itself, it's the ingredients that go into it. I hope that we haven't passed the point of no return, but I think it's possible that we have. I don't know if this is a problem that can be fixed. We have, for a couple of decades, we have just opened the doors to Chinese manufacturing, and we have shuttered our factories. So I don't know. Can you go back? That's a question for the economists to know. I don't know.
So what's next for you and Prestige Ameritech?
Well, we're continuing to hammer on the government. I'm telling them that any plan that they have to have a secure mask supply that allows China to sell masks at cheaper prices than Americans will fail, because hospitals will buy them. They're more concerned about saving money than they are about having a mask supply, and they can rationalize buying foreign products. They rationalize it by saying we're cash strapped and we need to save money. Here's how we can save money. But when you look at it and drill down, they're not saving that much money. It's a $40-50 million problem spread across 6,000 hospitals.
Well, oh, so hard, so horrible. Thanks for joining us, Mike. This is an important topic that people need to know about.
It is an important topic. That's why thank you for interviewing me, and that's why I say yes to anyone who wants to. I try to get the word out.
Well, thank you for trying to fight this fight for 15 years. I wish somebody had listened to you.
My pleasure. Lives, human lives are important, and this wasn't about me trying to make money. What salesman tells a story that doesn't work for 13 years? I did that. I did that because it's the only story, and it's true.
And you could have sold out to China yourself. You could have moved your manufacturing over to China, made a bunch of money.
We could have started out in China, or we could have moved to Mexico, and now we've chosen to walk barefoot through a lot of broken glass, and we have managed to survive. We're a small family company, and it gets a lot of publicity. We're just a small company, and we're private ownership. We don't have deep pockets. We're just out trying to do the right thing and create jobs. We put our plant in Texas. My business partner, Dan Reese, put our company in Texas, the founder of the company, simply because he thought it was the right thing to do.
Well, I think I can speak for everyone when I say I really appreciate what you've done and what you've been trying to do.
Well, I appreciate you helping me get the word out. If you ever need to interview me again, give me a call.
Hopefully, it won't require another horrible global pandemic.
Yeah, I agree.
Thanks, Mike. Believe me, we only just scratched the surface. If you want to know how deep this rabbit hole goes, be sure to check out the hour-long interview we did with Mike Bowen on the China Unscripted Podcast. Link is below. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.